On August 6, 1945, the world witnessed an event unlike anything seen before in human history. A single bomb obliterated almost the entire city of Hiroshima in a matter of seconds. Just 3 days later, the city of Nagasaki faced a similar fate. These two atomic bombings introduced the world to a new and terrifying level of destruction. The horror caused by these nuclear explosions not only ended World War II, but also ushered in a new era, one in which humanity has lived ever since, under the constant shadow of nuclear annihilation. But what drove the United States to make such a drastic and irreversible decision? Was the bombing truly necessary to end the war? Or could Japan's surrender have been secured through less catastrophic means? These questions have been debated for decades. The atomic bombings were not merely military actions, they were also deeply political, ethical, and scientific events. The consequences of that choice continue to echo through history and remain relevant in our world today. In this video, we will explore the complex and lasting impact of the bombings on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, examining different angles to better understand what happened and what we must do to ensure it never happens again. To understand why the atomic bombs were used, we need to look back at the global context that led to that moment. By 1945, World War II had raged for 6 long years, leaving a trail of devastation across Europe, Africa, and Asia. In the Pacific theater, Japan had expanded aggressively, taking control of vast areas. But by this stage of the war, Japanese forces were retreating and facing relentless opposition from the Allied powers. The United States and its allies had faced fierce resistance from the Japanese military. One of the most alarming aspects of Japan's strategy was its reliance on the concept of honorable death, encouraging soldiers and even civilians to fight until the bitter end rather than surrender. The Battle of Okinawa, which occurred in the spring and summer of 1945, illustrated the terrifying cost of this mentality. Over 200,000 people were killed, including many civilians. This battle served as a grim warning about what a full-scale invasion of the Japanese mainland might look like. Faced with the possibility of losing hundreds of thousands or even millions of lives in a prolonged war, President Harry Truman made a fateful choice. He authorized the use of a newly developed weapon, one that had been created in secret during the Manhattan Project. The atomic bomb, an experimental device never used before in combat, was seen by some military advisors as the only way to force a swift Japanese surrender and bring the war to an end. Still, the decision to drop the bomb was not without controversy. Many scientists and military leaders proposed alternatives. Some recommended demonstrating the bomb's power on an uninhabited island to scare Japan into surrendering. Others favored intensifying the naval blockade that was already crippling Japan's economy. However, a larger geopolitical concern loomed. The Soviet Union. The United States was not just trying to defeat Japan, it was also trying to send a powerful message to its future rival. Hiroshima was selected as the first target because it was a key industrial hub with military significance. On August 6, 1945, at 8:15 in the morning, a B-29 bomber named Enola Gay dropped the bomb, codenamed Little Boy. The result was immediate and devastating. A blinding flash lit up the sky, and the city was reduced to ashes in seconds. The residents of Hiroshima began that day like any other. Though the war had become an everyday reality, few could have imagined the magnitude of what was about to happen. When the bomb exploded, it released a fireball of unimaginable heat over several thousand degrees Celsius. Buildings near the epicenter were vaporized. People caught close to the blast were incinerated instantly. The shockwave that followed leveled much of the city and triggered fires that spread uncontrollably. An estimated 80,000 people died on the first day alone. In the days and weeks that followed, tens of thousands more would die from burns, radiation poisoning, and other injuries. Survivors described scenes of unimaginable horror-charred bodies lying in the streets, people whose skin had melted off, and a haunting mushroom cloud that symbolized a new kind of destruction. On August 9th, just 3 days later, a second bomb, this one nicknamed Fat Man, was dropped on the city of Nagasaki. Although it was even more powerful than the bomb used on Hiroshima, the mountainous terrain and cloudy weather conditions slightly reduced the scope of destruction. Even so, approximately 40,000 people were killed instantly, and many more died in the following months. The atomic bombings marked a critical turning point in world history. It was the first time nuclear weapons had ever been used in warfare, and their impact went far beyond the battlefield. The psychological, environmental, and social consequences of the attacks shaped the second half of the 20th century, and continue to influence international policy today. For those who survived the hibakusha, the nightmare was far from over. Many wandered through the rubble in shock, severely burned and disoriented, searching for lost family members or any form of medical help. But hospitals had been destroyed, and the few surviving doctors were overwhelmed by the scale of the disaster. The survivors soon began to suffer from the mysterious and deadly effects of radiation exposure. Many experienced hair loss, intense bleeding, vomiting, and infections. Over time, even more dire consequences emerged. Cancer rates among survivors skyrocketed. Pregnant women gave birth to children with serious deformities. Mental health issues, including post-traumatic stress and depression, were widespread. Social stigma added another layer of suffering. Many hibakusha were ostracized, as others feared their illnesses were contagious or hereditary. Finding work or marriage partners became incredibly difficult. Despite these hardships, the hibakusha became essential voices in the global campaign for peace. People like Setsuko Thurlow, who was just 13 when she survived the Hiroshima bombing, dedicated their lives to sharing their stories. Her testimonies reminded the world that these were not just numbers or historical facts. They were human lives, irreversibly changed in an instant. The emotional wounds left by the bombings were just as devastating as the physical ones. Many survivors relived the explosion in their minds for years. Nightmares, anxiety, and the fear of lingering radiation haunted them. The psychological toll passed on to the next generation, creating a legacy of trauma. But the bombings did more than end a war. They redefined the entire structure of international relations. The United States, by revealing its nuclear capability, established itself as the dominant global power. However, this show of force also alarmed the Soviet Union, which quickly developed its own atomic arsenal. By 1949, the Soviets had tested their first bomb, setting off the Cold War. This new era was defined by the constant threat of mutual annihilation. Rather than engage in direct combat, the world's superpowers entered an arms race. Billions of dollars were poured into the development of increasingly powerful nuclear weapons. Proxy wars in Korea, Vietnam, and other regions became the battlegrounds for ideological conflicts between East and West. The horrors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki led to the creation of several international treaties. The 1968 Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty was a major step, aiming to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons and promote disarmament. Later, agreements like the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty attempted to reduce the number of nuclear warheads in the world, yet the threat never truly disappeared. Countries like China, the United Kingdom, France, India, and Pakistan developed their own nuclear programs. North Korea and Iran remain at the center of heated international debates. Despite decades of diplomacy, the danger of nuclear war is still very real. The memory of the bombings lives on in Hiroshima's Peace Memorial Park and Atomic Bomb Museum. Every year, people gather to honor the victims and reflect on the meaning of peace. In Nagasaki, similar commemorations serve as reminders of what is at stake when nuclear weapons are used. Popular culture has also played a role in preserving the legacy. Films, novels, and artwork have captured the fear and devastation caused by nuclear war. The creation of Godzilla in 1954, for example, was deeply influenced by the trauma of the atomic bomb. Writers like Kenzaburo Oh and Masuji Ibuz brought the stories of the hibakusha to international audiences, keeping the memory alive in the United States and Europe. The Cold War period saw the rise of duck and cover drills in schools and the construction of fallout shelters. Movies like Dr. Strangelove and The Day After explored the insanity of total nuclear war, warning audiences of what could happen if diplomacy failed. The atomic bomb changed how humanity views war. The destruction of Hiroshima and Nagasaki showed that modern conflict could erase entire cities in an instant. That realization gave birth to the anti-nuclear movement, a global effort to ensure that such weapons are never used again. In the years after the war, a powerful movement grew to demand nuclear disarmament. Organizations like the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons (ICAN) worked tirelessly to raise awareness. In 2017, ISON was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for its efforts to eliminate nuclear weapons. Citizens around the world have joined protests, signed petitions, and urged their governments to pursue peaceful alternatives. Since the 1950s, these efforts have kept the issue of nuclear disarmament at the forefront of global consciousness. While challenges remain, the voices of the Hibakusha and peace activists have made a lasting difference. The legacy of Hiroshima and Nagasaki is not just one of destruction. It is also a call to action, a warning about what humanity is capable of, and a reminder of our responsibility to choose peace over war. The decision to drop the atomic bombs remains one of the most complex and controversial moments in modern history. While it may have brought a swift end to World War II, it also opened the door to a terrifying future. As we remember the victims and reflect on the consequences, we must continue to ask hard questions and strive for a world where such weapons are never used again.